let's get reviewing some assassins. Hello, welcome back to Planet 40k. Breaking away from the standard with the Space Marine stuff, we're going to be looking at the Vindicare Assassin, doing his review and giving him a Planet 40k star rating at the end of the video. So he's able to be used in any Imperium faction, so he's not going to be in your Space Marine Codex. You'll actually find him in the Psychic Awakening War of the Spider book, which is an 8th edition book, but it's still obviously in use until some sort of 9th edition rules come out for the Assassins. So let's get straight into his data sheet then. So he's going to be costing you 5 power level or 100 points. So as for his actual stat line, he's got a 7-inch movement, weapon skill 2+, ballistic skill 2+, strength 4, toughness 4, wounds 5, attacks 5, leadership 9 and a 6+ save. Now don't worry too much about that save because there will be some other bits and bobs in the ability section later in the video. But for now you can see that he's pretty quick and he's pretty much always hitting on a 2+, but we'll get to that. As for the actual weapons, he's going to be equipped with an Exitus pistol, an Exitus rifle and then blind grenades. So let's go through all 3 of those, starting with the pistol variant, which is a 12-inch range weapon, pistol 1, strength 4, -3 AP and the damage is D3. And then when you're resolving the attack made with this weapon, no invan saves can be made, and if you're firing at an infantry unit, you're always going to be wounding on a 2+. So not too bad as far as pistols go, and it can be fired into combat as well. As for his actual rifle profile, this is actually a 72-inch range, heavy 1, strength 5, -3 AP and the damage is D3, and the same rules apply here, no invan saves, and against infantry models you wound on a 2+. So both of these range weapons are effectively strength 8 or strength 10 against infantry models, obviously depending on what toughness they are, because you're always wounding on a 2+. And some of these things will be affected with the abilities, so hold that thought. But before we get into those abilities, let's quickly look at the blind grenade. It can be thrown at 12 inches, which is pretty decent. It's got grenade D6 as its profile. It's got the blast ability, and it does not actually inflict any damage. You only make the hit roll, you don't make any wound rolls, and instead, once you've made that hit roll with the blind grenade, you subtract 1 from all the hit rolls for the attacks made by the enemy unit until the end of the turn. So what this really is useful for is in Overwatch. So when you're being charged by a unit, rather than trying to pop shot with your pistol or your rifle with only 1 single dice needing a 6 to hit, you instead can roll D6, and then any single 6s are going to make the attacking unit have a -1 to hit penalty when trying to fight your assassin in combat. So that's why you've got the grenade. As for the actual abilities, which is really the main bulk of this guy's datasheet, because there's lots of rules that aren't too familiar if you're playing just Space Marines, for example. So first of all, you've got Agent of the Imperium. So if your army is Battleforged, you can include 1 Agent of the Imperium unit in either a patrol detachment, a battalion detachment or a brigade detachment. Now it can't be a fallen detachment because they obviously link to chaos. And also it's not actually going to take up an elite slot when you put it into one of those detachments. Then furthermore, it's not going to mess with any of your chapter tactics or your defenders of humanity or any of your faction abilities and bonuses that you normally get for fielding the same keyword. But these assassins do not mess up those faction abilities. It's really important because you don't want to be playing, for example, Blood Angels and then bringing an assassin and then not having the Red Thirst ability just because he's not got the Blood Angels keyword. But he doesn't affect those, so it's pretty good. Then moving on, he's got a few other abilities. So Execution Force. So if your warlord has the Imperium keyword, excluding Fallen again, you can also use this assassin as part of a Vanguard detachment, even though the detachment contains no HQ units. And if you do so, the detachment command benefits are changed to none. So that's the next one. Then you've got the Independent Operative. So this model can never have a warlord trait, and during deployment you can set the model up in concealment instead of actually being on the battlefield. And then at the end of any of your movement phases, the model can reveal its position, set it up anywhere on the battlefield more than 9 inches away from an enemy model. So it's effectively deep strike. And I'm pretty sure it'll be from turn 2 onwards in match play, which does give him a little bit of flexibility in terms of deployment, but he's got a 72-inch rifle. You probably don't need to use that, if I'm honest, and you're going to be wasting a turn if you're coming in on turn 2. The third one out of this list is the Lightning Reflexes, which is simply a 4+ invulnerable save. So that 6+ standard armor save can be completely overwritten because it's got a 4+ invulnerable save. Now unless your opponent's using some sort of ability or weapon that completely ignores your invuln saves, for example a Space Marine Psyker using the Null Zone Psychic ability, then he would be put on a 6+ armor save. But other than that, a 4+ invulnerable save is pretty decent. That's the actual faction abilities. Then we're going on to the actual assassin abilities within this datasheet. So he's got the Deadshot ability. So each time you select a target at range, you can ignore the Lookout Sir rule, and in addition, any unmodified wound rolls of a 6. For an attack made with the pistol or the rifle, you're going to change the damage characteristic of the weapon to D6 for that attack. So if we go right back to the weapons part of the datasheet, you can see both of those weapons are D3 as standard, but on a 6 they'll be D6. 6, and both of those weapons of course ignore the Lookout Sir ability. Bear in mind that they also ignore in-1 saves and wound infantry models on a 2+. So this makes this assassin a very strong character killer. Whether they've got an in-1 save or not, this guy's going to be pipping them off pretty nicely there. So his abilities even get better than that. So we've got the Faultless Aim ability, so attacks made with the ranged weapons from this model will always hit on a 2+ if the model did not move. However, 6s will still be required when firing Overwatch. So what it means is sometimes you get a -1 to hit penalty placed on your unit. For example, if they're playing Death Guard and they're using the Miasma of Pestilence ability, they can be placing a -1 to hit penalty on a given unit. However, if this assassin did not move, then he's still going to be always hitting on the 2+ regardless. Then furthermore, he's got the headshot ability. This one's really fun. After you finish resolving your attacks with the ranged weapons, if the enemy target lost some wounds but did not actually get destroyed as a result of your weapons, then you roll a d6. On a 3+, the model will suffer 1 mortal wound, and if the model is still not destroyed, you can do it again, but this time it will be on a 4+, and then you simply keep going until either the enemy model has been destroyed or you fail the roll. So you can keep throwing out more mortal wounds even after you've taken your shots with your ranged weapons there. He's then got the Spy Mask ability, so when resolving an attack at range, the target is not going to receive any benefits of cover to its saving throw. So that's not only light cover, that's also dense cover as well. So in particular here I'm thinking about the Raven Guard from Space Marines. Because of their Shadow Master's chapter tactics, they can get light and dense cover when they're more than 18 inches away. Whereas if you're firing with this assassin, you're simply removing that just by clicking your fingers there. Then the final ability is Stealth Suit. So when resolving an attack with a ranged weapon against your assassin, they're going to subtract 1 from the hit roll, and if you're in terrain, it's going to be subtracting 2 from the hit roll instead. Now of course in 9th edition, the hit rolls have been capped at a +1 or a -1, so subtracting 2 won't always come into effect. However, if they've got a +1 to their hit rolls, when you then subtract 2 from that, you'll simply end up with a -1 anyway, so that's why you sometimes have a subtract 2 within the game, even though it is capped at -1 or +1. It's always the overall sum after all the positives and negatives have been calculated. So that's all the abilities. Of course he's got the Officio Assassinarium faction keyword, and then of course he's an infantry model as well as a character. So the character keyword in particular is quite good because it can then use the Lookout Sir ability. So whether it's a vehicle, whether it's a monster, or a unit of 3 friendly models that are within 3 inches of the character, they can provide a Lookout Sir, which means he can't be targeted at range, and he knows all about the Lookout Sir because he ignores it. Let's talk about some stratagems that relate to this Vindicare assassin. There's actually 4 that can be used with him. The first one is for 2 command points. It's called Shadow Assignment. Now this one's pretty neat. So before the battle actually begins, you can effectively swap out your Vindicare assassin for one of the other 3 assassins within that book. Now all 4 of these assassins have their own unique abilities and their own unique playstyle. So maybe if you saw your opponent's list or you saw the mission and you thought maybe I don't need this assassin with the sniper, you can change it out for 2 command points. It's not going to cost you any reinforcement points, and it can even be done in match play. Now, all of these assassins are actually exactly the same in terms of points cost. They're all 100 points, so it shouldn't actually have any effect whatsoever, except you lose 2 command points. But then, of course, you get to swap the assassin, so it's pretty cool. The next one actually doesn't cost any command points. It's called Priority Threat Neutralized. So when an enemy character unit has been destroyed by your Vindicare assassin, you simply gain a command point, or you're going to be gaining 2 command points if that character was the Warlord. However, you can only use this stratagem once for each enemy character model destroyed, which that one's kind of obvious. You've only got 1 assassin within the army, but as soon as he snipes a character off the board, you're getting command points back there, pretty good. Then he's got 2 that actually link to his name, so the first one is Double Kill. Done in the shooting phase, after your Vindicare assassin model is shot, he can then shoot 1 additional time this phase, but it must be at a different target. Very useful if there's multiple characters on the board and you want to be taking them all out. The last one for 1 command point is Turbo Penetrator Round. So you use this stratagem in any phase where the assassin model from your army makes an attack with the Exitus rifle or the Exitus pistol, and it targets an opponent's vehicle or monster unit. If a hit is scored, the target simply suffers D3 mortal wounds, and then the attack sequence will end. But then you cannot be using the headshot ability, as it's not going to apply to the attack. Okay, so let's get on to the summary then for this assassin, starting with the good. Quite a lot of good here, so you can obviously go into any of the Imperium factions. So on the channel we mainly discuss Space Marines in terms of the Imperial stuff, so you can go into any of your Space Marine factions, and it's not going to mess with any of your faction bonuses or your chapter tactics or your combat doctrines, for example. It's not going to mess any of those up. And furthermore, it no longer costs you 1 command point just to field it. You previously had to use an auxiliary detachment, whereas now you don't. In terms of its damage output, it's extremely good at sniping characters and warlord models. because it's going to be hitting on 2s and against infantry models it's going to be wounded on 2s alike. That headshot ability is going to keep throwing out additional wounds on top of that, which are actually mortal wounds. Regularly there's not actually a save for those kind of wounds. To make this even better, targets do not receive any benefits of cover, whether it's light cover or dense cover. And that's after, of course, the lookout Sir bubble being popped because it's a sniper. It can then fire the pistol profile into combat, which is effectively the same as the rifle profile, just a little bit less AP, but it still does the job just fine. And then you've actually got the option of using the blind grenade in Overwatch just to give the enemy units a -1 to hit the assassin in combat. It's got the stealth suit ability for the -1 or -2 to hit the assassin, and then on top of that, to add to his resiliency, he's going to have a 4+ invulnerable save as well. You've then got the use of those 4 stratagems that are really solid for these assassins in general. The one in particular I liked is just having another shot at a different target. I can see that being really good against a real character heavy faction that you're going up against. And then finally he's got the option of the deep strike mechanic, being in concealment, adds a little bit more flexibility to your deployment. As for the bad, there's not as many bad here, but you can only field 1 assassin, so you can't be spamming them anymore like you used to be doing in old editions. I've just put down the weaknesses here. So it's got a weakness to flamers and other types of range attacks that auto hit, because there are no negatives to the roll, it's just a straight auto hit there. And it's the same with the psychic abilities. For example, Smite in particular, he's not going to be blocking any of those attacks. He'll only take 2 or 3 Witchfire attacks directed at the Vindicare assassin for him to go down. He's not great in melee, although he does have 5 attacks, and he does have that pistol of course that can shoot into melee in the second round of combat, but 5 attacks with no AP and 1 damage isn't really going to be pulling up any trees there. And then finally there's going to be no synergy with your actual codexes, whether it's a Space Marine codex or the Imperial Guard codex. It's going to have no synergy whatsoever, so he is a Lone Ranger, but to be honest that's all you need him doing really. So before we get on to the rating, let's get our shout out of the day done. Go with Endless Waffles for his comment relating to the Derrideo Dreadnought that we did recently, and he says the main problem with the Derrideo is that the Relic Contemptor Dreadnought exists. Very good point there, because that Dreadnought is pretty good. So let's get on with the rating today. So I'm going to be giving the Vindicare Assassin a Planet 40k rating of 4.5 stars. So a very solid character deleting assassin. For me he's a top tier unit in any Imperium faction. Guys, let me know below what you'd give it and why. Tell me what list you put him in and how you use him as well. Guys, that's it for the video today. Drop a like and a sub if you are new. Thank you all for watching and I'll see you next time.